Welcome back to the Robertson Media Center at UVA. Let's continue our instruction on Audacity by discussing sync lock, special effects, and exporting your final file. Again, this video series will not provide a great amount of detail, so if you need more information, check out Audacity's tutorials at the link below. Let's talk about sync lock. So you remember how we were showing how if you try to delete something, everything's going to shift down. So if I come in here and I say, oh, I don't want this part, and I hit delete, you see how that all shifts over? And then I've lost sync with all my other files. I'm going to Command Z, undo that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use the view, track size, fit to height, and then, ooh, I can see them all at once. Right? I have all these synced up in this file. This is one of my example files, Supernatural Podcast. And I just want to get rid of this one little phrase. So I'm going to click here and play it for you so you can hear the difference.
And then I suddenly noticed that there was no path at all, and I was completely lost.
So if I just wanted to get to the "and I was completely lost" part, if I wanted to silence that but keep everything else there, I can select it. And as I showed you before, you can use silence, and then it's gone. I'll bring this up so you can see it, right? And I can zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. So then it's gone, and everything else is still synced up. Now that's one way of doing it, but it's not exactly ideal. So I'm going to undo that. So here I have these two tracks that are synced up, and I don't want them to come apart. And if I move one, oh, you can see now it's going to get totally messed up, right? I can't move it around without selecting all of them, and that becomes a problem. So the easiest thing to do is to go to Tracks and turn on Sync Lock. So Sync Lock essentially is creating a lock between tracks, so as you move them, they all move together. So I'm going to select that, and it's going to do it for all of them. So you can watch as I click and grab, anything I grab is going to come with it. Now it's not perfect, but that does help if you're like, oh, I want to move this whole thing, but I want to keep them all together and synced up. You can use Sync Lock. Okay, I've cleared out everything except for the voice track. Now I'm going to show you a couple effects that you can use. So first, where are the effects? They are up here under the effects menu, and you have lots to choose from. Way too many. A couple that I want to point out that you can play around with. I mean, you can play around with any of them, but try these out first. The first one I would do is noise reduction. So if you have a lot of noise, click on that, and that is going to do an automated process to try to remove some of the noise in the background. Now, again, you can't remove all noise, and it's not going to be perfect, but it might help your project. So give that a try. Another thing you can do, if you want your audio to sound a little bit more like it's a radio broadcast, often for broadcast, they put it through a compressor, which is going to kind of normalize all the audio. Now, I don't like the way that that sounds for like a narrative podcast project, but if you want that radio sound, you can do that. So you go to Effect, go to Compressor, but just try it on the default. And you see what that does. It brings all of the volume up to be about normalized. Now let me play that with the compressor.
I don't know why I went to Romania. It was the cheapest flight, and I love Dracula movies.
Now I'm going to undo it and play that same section.
I don't know why I went to Romania. It was the cheapest flight, and I love Dracula movies.
See the difference? So that's what a compressor can do for you. And some professors will prefer that you use that. It's certainly a broadcast standard for radio. Another thing you can do, if you listen to a lot of radio broadcasts, you've probably heard how nice voices sound. For instance, sometimes they kind of have a low, booming-y sort of sound. And they just do that through adding an equalizer. So make a selection. And actually, the easiest thing to do would be to hit select over on the left side to select all of the audio. go to Effect and drop in Equalization. Now this looks really complicated, but essentially it's just all the frequencies of your voice across the bottom and how loud or soft they are over here. So what you want to do is find a frequency of your voice that you think is going to sound particularly flattering. So a good example of this is the telephone, for instance, right? It's just going to cut off all the low and the high frequencies. So if I preview that.
I don't know why I went to Romania.
Or you can do something like a bass boost, which I highly recommend for certain voices. Other voices may not work this way, maybe with a treble boost, for instance. But mine works pretty well with a bass boost. So
I don't know why I went to Romania. It was the cheapest flight.
Right. So that's one way you can do that. You can also actually draw it yourself. So you can say, oh, I don't want all the low frequencies. I just want to find a frequency that works for my particular voice. So that's something you can play around with. You can also, create more points, right, and lower this down here. You could say, oh, I like a little bit there. Play around with it to get exactly the kind of curve you would like, and then you can actually save the curve that you have created. Click OK. And as you can see, it actually boosts the audio, and I have a lot of clipping. So I'm going to undo. Now I've opened up my Spooky Podcast original file here again, and let's say I'm done and I want to turn it in. You're going to have to export it. Now, the first thing you might be wondering is, what's the difference between saving and exporting? I've been saving it all along, which you should be saving as you move through the project. If you go to File, Save Project, and Save Project As, it's going to tell you a warning, and this is really important. Saving the project is for an Audacity project, not an audio file. For an audio file that will open in other apps, use export. This is really important because saving a file, it's called an AUP file, is only something you can open in the program Audacity. If you want to be able to open it on anything else, you're going to have to export it. Now, you should be saving this so you can reopen it yourself as an AUP, and then make sure you save that on an external drive or put it on the cloud. But I'm going to save this project as, okay? And then I put it on my desktop, for instance, and click Save. It's a great way to save the file if you want to return and continue editing. But let's say I'm completely done. If I go to File, you see there's a menu for Export. Now, this is where you're going to have to look at your project guidelines. There are different types of files that you can export. For most classes that I've taught in, the professors prefer an MP3. This is where you can see export as MP3, but make sure you could also have an assignment that, for instance, wants a WAV. The difference between the two is an MP3 is a really compressed file, so it's easy to share online, for instance. It's easy to send or turn in a smaller file size, but it is compressed, so you don't have as much quality in terms of the sound. If you want a raw audio file without any compression, that's a WAV. But again, it's very big compared to an MP3. So I'm going to recommend an MP3 for most projects. And this is where you can select your settings. So I would choose the highest quality you can, because even that is going to be significantly smaller than a WAV. But your professor also might have recommendations on how many kilobytes per second. You can leave the rest as is. Joint stereo is fine, unless you want to export as a mono and your professor wants a mono track, but I highly recommend a stereo. Now, it's going to mix it down into a stereo track, so you have mono tracks and you have some stereo tracks. It'll actually mix it down all into one file, into one stereo track. So if you have a mono track and you moved it all the way over to the left, that's going to be on the left side in your stereo, your final stereo file. So here I'm going to choose desktop and click Save. Again, they'll be mixed down and exported as one single stereo file. Now this is going to pop up by default, and is simply just the metadata tags. So here's where you go, oh, none of this is right, clear it, and you can put anything you want in here, or you can just leave it empty, but I would definitely clear it. So I'll click OK, and now it's exporting. Now you can see that it's done exporting. and I have my file, my MP3 file, which is right next to my AUP. You can see when I save that, it also has this data here. I would recommend that you create a new folder. You say, my test project, put your name on it or whatever you want to call that, and then put everything you used in one folder and keep it there. The important thing is that you keep all of your audio files that you used, which I didn't do here, right? I should have all of those, voice tracks and everything all in one folder so that I can return to that AUP and continue editing it on a different computer, for instance. But if you just want the file to turn in, here it is, the MP3 file, and you can see how large it is. It's 5.9 megabytes, which is not bad. You can even send that in an email.